Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for joining the Falling for Learning podcast. Today's episode is going to talk about perseverance and stamina. Now, again, this is a very personal topic to me because my book, Little Mobile Home on the Tundra, is getting its finishing touches. And I am very, very, very tired. Now, what you should know is that I have been working on this book for years and years and years. Of course, a lot of not working on the book, obviously. So, over and over and over again, I've stopped and there's just something though inside of me that didn't let me quit and didn't let me stop working on this project about my life growing up in Alaska and overcoming generational dysfunction and healing. So I couldn't let it go of this story, but I took a long, long time to finish it. Now, if you're a parent out there that is helping students who are struggling, that sometimes they want to quit, they want to give up, then this episode's for you. So dial in, share it with someone who has not, you know, really mastered what to do to keep someone going, our kids going, ourselves going when things are hard, when it's not pretty, right? Now, we just want to start with some common definitions that we're going to be talking about today, right? Stamina. Stamina, number one, is the ability to stay engaged over time. Now, engaged could mean that you have the energy, it means you have the will, right? So there's different ways to stay engaged over time. But obviously, having that staying power is what stamina is. And we know that some of our kids don't have that yet. And we're going to really talk about how to dig in and help them build that muscle. The other thing that we are going to be talking about is perseverance, right? That is the ability to keep going through a challenge or boredom. Even boredom, because we know kids sometimes say, oh, I'm bored. But of course, this is important information that they need to learn. This is a boring part of a particular process that they're learning, right? Especially when people are beginning to do something. They're learning the basics of ballet. Maybe kids were like looking at ballet and thinking, oh, that's so amazing. They're leaping in the air. They're doing all these things. But beginning ballet doesn't look anything like that, right? It is very slow, really building up those muscles and standing a certain way, taking a step here or there. So they might be bored with this beginning process, but it is needed and necessary for them to get to the leaping across the stage and a really, you know, being as inspiring as the, prima ballerinas and all of that. So, again, this is something that is so important, a tool, a skill, right, that we need to help equip our children with as they are growing up and getting ready to enter to the adult world, right? How do we make sure that they build that perseverance and stamina into their personal lives, which of course, in their academic lives, that's going to really translate as they are working on hard, challenging, really intensive processes and goals, right? So, how do we do that? So, it's really important for us to consider, you know, quit kids really quit when they're frustrated. And as I think about working on my book, like my book is so personal and I decided to make it fictional, but it is very personal. And part of it being personal is growing with the book, thinking about and reflecting on experiences that I've had at a younger age. And really, there were times in my life where I was not able to articulate why I felt a certain way or what was happening or what I wanted, even. So I think this is very important for us to understand that really helping kids to understand the process of going through something difficult or challenging. It looks different at different parts of the process. But I think very much so, they need to really have an overview of what that process looks like from the beginning to the end. And again, it's easy to say what it is, but actually when they're in the process, they you may need to point it out to them again. You will definitely need to point it out to them again, okay? But one of the first ways to make sure that we're building stamina and perseverance in kids is making sure that they have a chunk, they're chunking out a task. This is a long task, it's an arduous task, it's something that's many, many phases and stages of it. And they need to know that you don't have to do all of this process in one sitting. It's not going to happen overnight, and they're really going to have to dial into what all those 1 million steps to that great achievement will be. And so, chunking a task is very, very important. So, that looks like outlining the steps of a task. And then that outline can actually be used in the small areas and small bits of time that you have to work on something. So, like during this 30-minute chunk, we're going to work on these three things, these three tasks, and get it done. Like, that is one important way to make sure that kids are seeing a process and seeing it through, right? Because they could look at the little parts of the process and they could look at the overview of the large process, like all the things that need to be done, all the stages of it. It helps to direct their path too, as they are working on a project week by week, day by day. So, looking at those tiny steps that need to be done to get the big, huge part of the project done, right? Side note, I'm sipping on some tea, medicinal tea. I'm starting to feel a little bit under the weather. And wouldn't it be the way when you're about to like go on vacation, go into the holidays, that you're starting to feel under the weather? But I'm fighting it with my medicinal tea, prayer, positive thoughts, right? Like, you're not going to take me down in my work that I've been doing. You better believe I have been, as we're articulating with my students, like all that, and I'm having them do it. They're watching me do it. I've definitely been coughed. They've coughed in my face. They've sneezed in my face. I've like cleaned off like pools of mucus, snot, whatever you want to call it. So a lot's going on right now. So my immune system is fighting. I'm fighting with my medicinal tea, trying to get enough rest, do what I need to do to take care of myself, and make sure that my students are washing their hands every time they do a very productively gross sneeze. Back to business. Back to business. Okay. That's all the danger that I want to face in my daily life as a teacher is being sneezed and coughed on. Whew. Anywho, okay. Now my book is over 300 pages, okay? So I did have to break it down scene by scene. I had to really sometimes I took a step back and then took a step back too long, like put it down for a year or two or whatever. But sometimes it was just processing, like really understanding and learning in that process. Oh my goodness. I hope you didn't hear that. Anyway, that process really includes some reflection, conversations, singing, crying, all of the things. And when you're working with kids on a long project, helping them break it up into chunks again is very helpful, but also giving them some support when it really wanes, like that tiredness wears in, especially when things get really busy and they only have that little bitty chunk at the end of the day. to work and get something done when they're at the very last nerve they have of the day. Um, it's really important to let them know that this is part of the process. Those of you who are, parents of, athletes, little tiny athletes and whatever, or growing athletes, you will know that sometimes they're really exhausted and they're tired. They're like, I don't really want to go to practice. Why do we have a game or whatever? But reminding them that they're living the dream, they're in process, right? And feeling tired, feeling bored, feeling overwhelmed sometimes is the process. They're in the process, and this is what the process looks like. Sometimes when we're in a process by ourselves or without that support and without that encouragement, we're thinking, okay, we're doing something wrong. Like I got to be doing something wrong. This is so tired. I'm so bored. I'm so, you know, just don't want to do this anymore at this point in time. It is important to remind our kids and ourselves, if we're going through this, right, that this is the process. Feeling tired, feeling irritated, feeling all of the things. That is the part of the process. You're in the process. And it's okay to feel this way at this time, but know that this is part of the process. Sit in those feelings for a little bit and then push forward. So, perseverance again is not just about feelings. It's about showing up and continuing on when you don't feel like it, when you're tired, when you maybe don't feel like you even have any strength. Maybe take that break and get back to it. So, perseverance is really something that kids want to be prepared for. You want to tell them, like, this is going to get hard. We're starting this process of learning ballet, of learning how to play soccer, of writing a book, whatever it is. And it might feel tiring sometimes. That's okay. And they might forget. You have to tell them, remember I told you sometimes it's tired, you're tired. This is how it feels. Sometimes you're bored. Like, this is the process and you're going to be okay. And lots of people have done it before you. And I had the same process. But I felt the same way and you could do it too. Right? So those kind of things that we could tell our children, we could prepare them ahead of time. Like, you are going to be able to finish this. But know that sometimes when you're trying to finish something hard, something arduous, something that is a gigantic task, a major accomplishment that you're trying to go through, you're going to feel like you're doing everything wrong or it's not working out, because that's part of perseverance, right? Sometimes there are setbacks along the way, right? One part of my, when I was writing my book, one of the people who was reading it, one of my professors was like, this character of the sister actually is only here like 3 times. And the rest of the scenes, there's no mention of the sister, there's no sister. So you're either have to go back and add the sister to all of these scenes or either take the sister out. And I was like, I don't know what I should do, but I just realized I think making it fictional and taking the sister character out just was more what I was able to deal with in my, first novel skill set. You know what I'm saying? Somebody was like trying to push the issue, like, no, that's something more than that to that, and I'm like, well, it could be, I don't know, but factual based, like just facts, like that's a lot to go back and add this scene to all of it, and I wasn't ready to do that. I wasn't willing to do it. Um, when I was in the middle of this process, I wanted to be done, not like go back and start all that over again. And so, that was kind of a setback, and I had to make the like decision, like, no, I'm just gonna have this brother sister character is not gonna be 3 kids. So again, setbacks, things not looking the way you thought it was going to look, but I could still have a fictional book. And of course, this is part what makes it fictional. It's not real. And that was another thing I was thinking about. Should I make this a memoir? And people were pointing out, well, a memoir is really for people who like big stars, and not saying that one day I won't be a star or whatever. That's neither here nor there. But it's like, is this, what you want to do? And ultimately I thought, I think fictional is best, and you have more flexibility that way, right? So getting back to how to make sure your child is feeling supported throughout a hard and arduous task, when they feel like giving up, when they feel like things aren't going their way, when there's a setback, right? So the next thing is really having a consistent time block that they're working on those things. Now, as kids, a lot of times they have a consistent time block already set. They have practice at a certain time, maybe have rehearsal at a certain time. But there are times when they might be off season, or they need to do something to stay engaged or in shape through the off season. So planning dedicated time that you're going to still make sure that you're taking care of your health, you're still running or exercising or lifting weights or whatever you're doing to build yourself up, reading every day, whatever that goal is, that you are dedicating yourself to a time. Again, perseverance is not when you feel like it, it's not when you have a lot of energy. It's going forward and moving forward in it, even when you don't feel like it. And that again is a level of maturity and a character trait that you want to build in your child, right? Because you can't be there all the time to force them or make them do things. Them learning how to be a self regulator and be self disciplined is gold, right? So many people wish that they could have taught their child that, or their child had that, or even for themselves. Like, I wish I had this for myself, right? And we talk about, success and leadership with your kids. Like, this perseverance and this ability to have stamina, even, like build up their muscles and build up their endurance, building up their staying power. This is something that the bosses have, right? We want our kids to be leaders. We want them to be able to be entrepreneurs, leaders in their field, innovators, and all of this leads to that, right? This is part of the ingredients that we need for success. So, again, we need to make sure that there's a huge, whenever they have these, as they're setting goals, there will be larger and larger and more challenging and longer goals to achieve. But we're helping them to give them an outline. And again, I always want to say, releasing that scaffold. Maybe we give them an outline before, but as time goes, they're giving themselves their own outline. They are chunking it into smaller tasks, right? The point of the outline or the overview is then they could break it into smaller tasks. They see it from the beginning, they see it to the end, right? And then they could break it into smaller tasks. Again, whew, extremely important. All right. And other ways that you could do this is using checklist, timers, even breaking it into physical chunks, as far as like folders and different containers that contain different stages of whatever project they're working on. Okay. Basically, once they finish this checklist, that is a win. We talked about in our last episode about celebrating wins. Even if they're small wins, it helps to fuel you forward, to fuel you forward. So it's so important that we are thinking about how to break a huge task into a huge like accomplishment into small tasks, and then celebrate those wins as different stages or levels are reached. When they're actually doing the work for those small chunks, super important, make sure that you have some timers, visuals such as checklists, all those kind of things, those tools to help them. Again, you could start by making it for them and building it for them, and then encourage them to make their own. Planning, right? Planning on how to take care of and tackle that next phase of whatever their project is so important. All right. So again, getting support, right? Because it is part of the process to feel discouraged, to feel tired, to even maybe question, should you give up, or is it worth it to continue? And we've got to tell our kids, we got to remind them We've got to tell them that their goals are worth the time it takes to achieve it, right? So keep going. Do not stop. I know you feel like stopping. And again, when I was a kid, something that really encouraged me was a lot of biographies. And they talked about the lifespan and the life achievements of these different people in the world that were history makers and leaders in their industry and inventors and all of that, and how they felt discouraged, how they felt like giving up, but they kept going despite that. And so that is a way. You also want to talk about your own personal struggles and things that are hard for you, because you may not be sure what gets to your kid. The message may be great coming from like this great hero in history, but it might be just as impactful for them to see you talking about a setback that you had. If you're working on goals, you're working on things and how it goes for you as you're progressing, right? And how sometimes you feel discouraged, but I'm going to keep going because this is what I want to do. So, a lot of us have goals that we are going to continue to work on, even though we have kids, right? Our life doesn't stop because we have kids. And those goals, a lot of times, are inspired by our kids, right? Sorry, gotta have my tea. Anyway, so taking again on my note, something I really want you to think about is how much we talk to kids about getting things started. We don't talk enough about helping them to see something through to the end. And that's really where the treasure is, right? Getting to the end of that dream, seeing themselves through something when it's ugly, when it's fun, when it's hard, when they're busy, whatever comes their way, they're navigating how to still push forward with whatever that aim is that they have for themselves, right? So important. Okay. And one of the last things that we really want to focus in on is protecting our time. We know that if we fail to plan, we plan to fail, right? But that planning has to do with setting specific times and focusing on that time and protecting that time, protecting it. And there are some things that are unavoidable, but you make that time up to yourself. You make sure that you reschedule the time or that you fit it in a different way, that you adjust plans so that you could still make that commitment to yourself, right? Because we know like certain work schedules or different things happen and it sets everything back, or it makes you have to reassess and rejigger things, like move things around. But that's what you need to do when you're trying to succeed. You're you are making it happen no matter the obstacles, and helping our kids to navigate the obstacles, thinking about what are other ways that we could get this done, even though we used to do it like this, but because of this new setback, what are we going to do instead, right? And so those three main things, right? When we're teaching kids how to persevere and to develop stamina, the first thing is chunking that huge goal, that big pie in the sky they're going for, how to chunk it. Number one. Number two, we're thinking about making sure that they are able to get some encouragement. So they might join a team of people that are going through the same thing that they're going through. They might get advice from someone who has gone through what they've gone before, and then you might be that person that might be that one person in the cheering section for them. Just depends on what it is they're working on, and how it goes, right? You might be the only person, but make sure that they have that element where there's some encouragement. There's someone there to cheer them on and let them know that this is a phase where people get stuck. This is a phase where people get tired. This is part of the phase where people are, feeling like everything is going wrong, but reminding them that the struggle is part of the process. The struggle is the process. Getting through the struggle and getting to that end part, getting through that and to the part where they want to, this is what they were wanting to do, and this is what they're doing. They're in it. And it's fine to feel this way. In fact, it's normal to feel this way, and that's why you could keep going, because it's a normal part of what's happening. Telling them about it ahead of time is very helpful. So they kind of know what to expect. And I'm saying kind of because there's something about me just telling you something and then you actually going through it. You're like, I didn't really know it was going to be like this. I remember you saying that, but I don't remember this. It's fine. But reminding them of it and saying that you're doing fine, all you have to do is make this adjustment. All you have to do is keep going, then they will know this is normal and they can achieve more and more things as they progress in their life because they have seen this process. They've gone through this process. You've modeled it for them, right? And then the very last thing that we want to make sure that we do is protect the time that we have dedicated to whatever this process is that we are trying to achieve. So, planning the time, protecting the time. Okay? Now, I enjoy talking to you about this. I hope that you tune in to other episodes, like and subscribe. And I want you to make sure that you're doing something today that gives your child the competitive advantage. Have a great week.